I think you always have to know your worth, and I hear that all the time, and it's something that doesn't make sense until you experience it. And if you don't ask for the money that you're worth, within reason, okay? I think I'm worth millions of dollars, but I don't ask for that.
I agree.
I think if you know your worth and you ask for that and create space for telling people like, hey, this is what I charge, and make sure that you collect that, or make sure that you're paying yourself in your own business, you will go far. Because with paying yourself and knowing your worth, people begin to realize that you are worth that money, and you can earn that money, and that's how you make a life for yourself.
Welcome to the Amani Experience Podcast. In this podcast, you will experience wisdom, advice, and stories from creatives all over the world. Your host is Amani Roberts, who is a DJ, music producer, professor, avid book reader, and developing salsa dancer. On the show, we love to share the stories of creative professionals, especially people who've gone from the corporate life to the creative life. Once again, welcome to the Amani Experience Podcast.
For today's show, we are going to talk to Chef Meg Walker of Made by Meg Catering. Now, Meg started her professional life as a financial advisor with Merrill Lynch and Smith Barney. Then after 5 years, she decided to pursue her passion for cooking. She attended Le Cordon Bleu in Pasadena, California at night while she was still working the stock market during the day. I respect the grind. Being a constant on the President's Honor Roll throughout her training, she was honored to work in a Michelin-star kitchen in Los Angeles by the name of Ortolan, and so she grew her business. I have seen her business up close and personal for the past 6 years. She's been in business for over 10 years, and to watch her growth and her business grow has been very inspiring. I think you'll enjoy some of the wisdom she shares with us and just her story in general. It's a great story, and I'm very excited to have her on the show. So without further ado, let's talk to Meg Walker.
Okay, welcome back to the show. Today we have Meg Walker from Made by Meg Catering. I always want to say Meg Hall, but Meg Walker, because recently married. So welcome to the show, Meg. How are you doing today?
Doing great. Thanks for having me.
You're very welcome. We'll start off and let you kind of introduce yourself and talk to us maybe about how your life transitioned from when you were at Villanova at like age 21, 22, right, and kind of take us to current day.
Okay. How long do we have? So I'm Meg Walker. I own Made by Meg Catering. We're based out of Redondo Beach. Started about 10 years ago out of my home kitchen in Hermosa. It's been an interesting path, actually. So I graduated college and ended up working at a restaurant and bar. It's actually P.F. Chang's.
Okay.
Back when it first started out, one of the flagship stores, and I loved it. And did some backpacking through Southeast Asia and all that fun stuff. And my dad called me up one day and said, you need to be a serious professional. I'm sick of you messing around. I have an interview with a Merrill Lynch broker and you're going to go. I'm like, great. So from that one phone call with my dad, I ended up spending about 5 years in the investment world and realized it wasn't my passion. Had some coaching with a business coach, and he had said, this is really, I can tell that you really don't want to be in the corporate world anymore. And he said, you're kind of like a dancer who's trying to paint, and you can't possibly paint well if you're supposed to be dancing. So off I went into the food world because it was my passion. I loved entertaining and hospitality. And that was a really interesting jump for me. In fact, I was in culinary school while I was still at Merrill Lynch and Smith Barney. And nice. My colleagues were not happy that I was focusing on something else, but they were really happy to get all of my culinary school homework projects. So they'd get like full cakes and all sorts of fun food in the office. But eventually they knew that meant that I was going to leave. So I actually come from a long line of entrepreneurs. I have 5 generations of entrepreneurs in our family history. And I didn't quite realize that. But I knew that bug for wanting to start my own business came from somewhere. And I ended up starting my own catering business. And I just left the corporate world. And honestly, there's probably been one time in the last 10 years where I was really worried about, is this business really going to work? Because the work kept rolling in, and there's always been cash flow issues. But the truth is, like, I've never thought about leaving the catering world or the hospitality world. So I've been really lucky in that regard. But 10 years down the road, the business looks a lot different than, the days that I would go to culinary school at night. So it's been an interesting, beautiful road. So I'm pretty happy with where we're at.
Yeah, impressive. Your journey is very impressive. So I'm very honored to be associated with you and to work with you. So keep up the good work.
Wow, thank you.
For sure. Definitely well-deserved. Talk to us about when you made the decision to say, okay, I have to go to culinary school because this is my passion and I'm going to leave kind of the more brokerage firms. Yeah. Like what was the tipping point?
It's a really, really strange story. It shouldn't really mean anything, but for some reason it did for me. Someone was in my office at Smith Barney and accidentally knocked over a trash can. And I reached down to pick something up and put it back, write it and put everything back in. It wasn't messy trash. It was like paper trash. And someone in my office said, "Don't touch that. We've called maintenance and they're going to clean it up." And I looked at them and I said, "Are you so handicapped with helping out and being a part of, making something work that you can't reach down and pick up a couple pieces of paper and put the trash can back together?" And I realized that living this 3-piece suit life and an air-conditioned lifestyle and fancy high-end lunches and not really doing very much with my life that felt like it had a lot of meaning, and being able to clean up a very simple mess and do things for myself, was that I didn't want to be there anymore. These were not my people. I like to get in and get my hands dirty and help and make things work and be hospitable. So that one trash can changed my life, apparently.
That's good. Good story. So you've had your business for over 10 years.
Yeah.
What do you think is important for creatives like you and I to kind of succeed in today's environment?
I think you always have to know your worth. And I hear that all the time. And it's something that doesn't make sense until you experience it. And if you don't ask for the money that you're worth, within reason, okay? I think I'm worth millions of dollars, but I don't ask for that.
I agree.
I think if you know your worth and you ask for that and create space for telling people hey, this is what I charge, and make sure that you collect that, or make sure that you're paying yourself in your own business, you will go far. Because with paying yourself and knowing your worth, people begin to realize that you are worth that money and you can earn that money. And that's how you make a life for yourself.
Good. That's a good answer. So when you mentioned there was one point, maybe 10 years ago, when you were worried, or after 10 years, worried about kind of cash flow. What was the turning point in your catering career when you finally realized, okay, this is for real, I can do this, I'm doing this? What was the turning point in your opinion?
Today? Yesterday? I heard this famous Jerry Seinfeld quote where he said, when people ask me what my favorite episode of Seinfeld was, I always say, how do you ask a person what their favorite breath was? You're just happy that the next one came. So I feel that way about my catering career. You are always happy for every job that you book. And I think with that fresh perspective and realizing that you're lucky for every piece of business that comes your way, your clients feel that and they know that you appreciate them. But in reality, I would say the concrete moment was when I built my store over in Redondo Beach.
Yes.
And I didn't have the money to remodel the kitchen space that I got, but I just knew that the money would come and the jobs would come to be able to pay for it. So literally I paid for my kitchen in cash as I went. And that's when I realized wow, I actually have a real business and I really have to do this now. When I first started, when you first start your own business, there's times when you take naps. Do you remember naps?
I do remember naps.
I have not taken a nap in 5 years, but there was a point at which, you're cool, I can take some time off. That does not happen anymore.
No rest for the weary. No rest. Tell people where your shop is, since you mentioned it. Tell everyone so they can come visit.
Sure. It's in Redondo Beach. It's at 234 South Pacific Coast Highway. It's right at the corner of Torrance Boulevard and PCH. It's in a little shopping plaza.
Yeah.
I say little, but it's so big in my heart. So
great sandwiches you have there too. I highly recommend any of them.
Thank you.
For sure. Tell us, you're a chef. Why do you love being a chef?
Oh. Well, I think food brings people together. We know that 3 times a day, likely people are eating, right? Some people like to eat alone, but most of the time meals are best when they're shared. And so I love that. I love that in any situation, you always need someone to prepare food. So if there's never a social situation that I'm not included in or not needed, I love going on vacations with people and we get a house and I end up always doing breakfast and I feel like I have a purpose. And so I love that about being a chef. You always have a purpose. You're always welcome. And if this whole situation doesn't work out, I can just grab my bag of knives, and off I can go and knock on the back door of any kitchen anywhere in the world. And I love that.
Great. Cool. If you had to cook a meal and your life depended on it, what meal would you prepare?
Oh, man. I always get this question. It's the one question people ask all the time. It's like, what's your favorite dish? But not if my life depended on it. That's a good one. I think if my life depended on it, I would make my chocolate chip cookies.
Oh,
yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, I've made like 1,000 batches of those in my life. And I actually made most of those before my dad told me like that I had made the perfect batch, and every batch before that actually sucked, and he couldn't tell me to my face. So.
But he finally told you this was a perfect batch.
Yeah.
Oh,
it
thanks,
took a while.
Dad.
Yeah, thanks, Dad.
Great. My dish would be crab cakes. I love my crab cakes.
Oh,
that's just me. So,
wait a minute.
Yes.
You didn't tell me this.
Yes.
We need to have some of those.
I bring the crab meat back with me whenever I go visit back east. I bring it, freeze it, bring it with me. So
that's what's up.
yeah, that's one of my superpowers.
I love it. That's a good superpower.
Yes. What is something that scares you?
Oh, wow. Do something that scares you once a day. And
Once a day? Twice a week? Whatever.
Oh my gosh, I say that to myself every day. Whenever there's something I don't want to do, I'm like, you're doing that thing that scares you today. Good for you, Meg. Something that scares me. Employees?
Okay.
Just kidding. Just kidding.
Okay.
Well, it's just, I think having a staff is a really like hairy cupcake, as I like to call it, because cupcakes are great, but if there's a hair on it, man, it's not good. But employees bring a much different dynamic to owning a business and being creative, and I think that's the big question people always struggle with their business. It's like, when do I bring that first person on? When do I bring that second person on? That fourth person on? And there's so much to it because they're people and they need to be loved and encouraged and cared for and disciplined. Like there's just, it's a really dynamic relationship. So while it can be so rewarding, it also can be scary because you can run into people who aren't doing the best thing for your business or don't have the best intentions. And, you always have to have, one eye on the back of your head.
Yes.
So most of the time they bring me great joy, but other times they really scare me.
Do you remember when you made your decision to hire your first employee?
Oh man. In catering, employees can come and go because they can come and help you for an event and then go. So I had some of my first helpers very soon.
True.
But my day-to-day people, I remember that, and I really toiled with it. It's like kept me up at night. I was like, what is this? What are their intentions? Could they possibly love my business? Like, I love it. And, you just have to just jump sometimes.
Yes.
Yeah, you really do.
Cool. In your industry, in our industry, especially being a chef in the catering business, it's a very crowded space.
Yeah.
What do you do to kind of rise above all the noise and distinguish yourself?
Be excellent. I love the Steve Martin quote, which is, be so good they can't ignore you. And that goes with every facet of catering an event, I believe. So your food not only has to be fantastic, that's really a given. They expect your food to be fantastic. But our service staff is absolutely incredible. The hospitality that they show just goes above and beyond. And I see that over and over again whenever I go anywhere. And I do feel like that extra level of service that comes with planning their event, making sure the logistics are taken care of, and that they're taken care of, we take a lot of responsibility on to make sure their event goes smoothly. So I think we set ourselves apart with our service and care and love for hospitality.
Okay, great. So talk to us about how a failure or an apparent failure sets you up for later success. Do you have like a favorite failure of yours you want to share?
Oh my gosh. I always have that pizza moment in every single service where like I'll be serving dinner for 200 people at a wedding and I just look completely lost and I'm like, let's just order pizza, like every single time. And it's like this old instinct where you're just like, you just want to have that like fight or flight emotion. You just want to fly. But of course that's never happened. There isn't room for failure when you're doing an event, which is really interesting because I've never forgotten anything that I couldn't replace, and or I didn't find a way to replace it with the client, knowing that we had forgotten it at the kitchen. I would say more of my failures have come in the paperwork side of things because as a creative, I think that our concentration is on our craft. And then what you realize is that to actually make it a business and be an entrepreneur, you have to either outsource certain things or learn how to do the paperwork yourself. Mm-hmm. So I've had a couple of little moments that did not go well. And if you want to be specific,
pick one.
Oh, pick one. How revealing are we going to be? Well, the state of California requires that almost everybody you employ is an employee, not a W-9 contractor.
Yes.
So I've had some issues with, trying to figure out who's supposed to be employed and who's supposed to be a contractor. And that has been a really tough thing for us. So we switched everybody over about 2 years ago. So there are no questions with any tax board of any kind. And that was a really tough mountain to climb, because as a business owner, even hiring your first person, you kind of go, I want to ignore the rules that everybody else is, pushing on us. I want to ignore the fact that this is going to cost me more and I have to charge the client more and I'm not charging them enough as it is. So those kinds of things, like the failure is in not leaving my ears open and like hearing what people had to say about it. So,
okay.
Yeah.
You've done many, many events all over the world.
Yeah.
We'll say any notable ones that really kind of just always stick out in your mind that, I really love this one. Not that you have to pick a favorite, but any ones that you're like, wow, that one really kind of touched me in a great way.
Oh, the one that'll always stick out for me was the wedding I did for Kaylee Cuoco up at Hummingbird Nest Ranch. And it was, the reason why I loved it, one was obviously because she's just such a beloved character and she was just such a wonderful person. And she was really fun to work with. She wanted us to do what we did best, and that's like the omakase for a chef. You're just like, yes, I'll do what I really want to do.
Yes.
And she also did it did the celebration for 3 days. So we spent a long time together. It was a rehearsal dinner, the reception, and the brunch, which is a typical celebration for a wedding here in Southern California, but it's not all done at the same place with all the same people. So we were just there for so long and everything was so intricate. There were so many details. It was like Christmas here. I mean, we just ordered so much stuff online because it was all custom things for her and printing. So it was a lot of fun.
If you could sit down with 21-year-old Meg and give her some advice, what advice would you give her?
My advice to 21-year-old Meg would be work 10 times harder than you think you have to. Work a few extra hours. Don't complain, and just keep moving forward. I think we get a little bogged down and feel sorry for ourselves because we're working a little bit harder, or someone's putting us through the ringer a little bit more than we'd like, or anything like that. I think you just have to realize, like, this is going to take a little more effort than I thought it would. And if you go about it with joy and like willingness, I think it just gets rid of so much resistance.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good advice. Anything else?
I think we always think there's a really long road ahead of us, that we have all this time to get things done. And the truth is, we don't. Take an extra hour to do something, and maybe stop, messing around on your phone, or do something, like avoid those distractions and just cut them in half, and you get so much time back. Like I would love to have done that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good. What's maybe one new habit that you've added in the past, into your daily routine in the past year or so that's really helped you kind of continue to improve?
I've added what I call Meg time.
Tell us about Meg time.
Well, I had noticed that I was on my phone like when I woke up in the morning. So I would get up and I would set my alarm about 30 minutes to an hour ahead of time. And I'd sit in bed or lay in bed, and I would go through my Facebook and my Instagram, and I wouldn't do anything active. I wouldn't post. I wouldn't say anything to anyone else. I would just be like a voyeur, and it's kind of a waste of time, and it's a bunch of noise. And I had this talk with someone. I said, I'm having a hard time getting out of bed. I couldn't figure out what it was. And we had this whole talk, and he said to me, you have a legitimate need to have time by yourself that's not dedicated to your employees or your husband or anything else, but you're meeting it illegitimately. Like you're finding a different way to meet this need. Why don't you let your feet hit the ground when you hear the alarm clock and get up out of bed and do something that makes you happy, and try out a couple different things. So like go out and get a cup of coffee and don't put any makeup on, just put on your sweats and go out there and grab a cup of coffee, or go to the gym or do something else. And having that extra Meg time in the morning, that 30 minutes to 60 minutes, so like I can revisit that and be like, remember when you got up and did something really nice for yourself? Remember when you did something peaceful for you? And it lets me deal with daily irritations or like exhaustion or anything like that. so much better. So it's that morning time. And in fact, I've heard that from so many different entrepreneurs that extra morning time when you're just by yourself creates so much space for you. And I truly believe that. I resisted it, but now I've done it and I love it.
Nice. Good advice. So we like to talk about books on the show. So, and I know you are an avid book reader, so, we bond with that. Is there any book that you've read in the past couple of years that you think people should maybe stop what they're doing right now and start to read it right away?
Right away.
And it could be a couple books if there's more than one that comes to mind.
I realize that leadership books are like my form of addiction. And when I don't read them, I feel like less at peace. Just so weird. I didn't think that would be the thing, but it is. So my favorite book is Leadership and Self-Deception. It's about how we play a part in every conversation about irritation or ways that people react to us, and we refuse to take responsibility for what we add to that conversation. And as a leader, it brings so much to my landscape and toolbox when it comes to dealing with either clients or with my staff. We have 115 employees, dealing with all of those different personalities, all these different people, have that in my arsenal to always go back to and say wow, I need to look at this conversation again. I need to look at this interaction again. And it has stopped so much irritation in my life.
Good.
Yeah. Another one I'm in the middle of reading is Boundaries for Leaders. And it's about where we draw the line with people. And it's not just pushing people off or creating space between us. It's about making sure that any of those irritations or anger or other things that have nothing to do with what we're talking about at this exact moment with that person creates that space so they don't feel any of that spillover. So you're never crossing two different kinds of emotions in two different conversations. If you ever notice if you're not feeling great and then you end up snapping at someone, you're that snapping isn't about that person. It's about how you felt before.
Got it.
So Boundaries for Leaders is kind of awesome for that.
Okay, interesting. Leadership. What other kind of leaders do you follow or kind of look up to in terms of how they run their businesses, maybe live their lives?
Oh man, they're not famous actually.
They're perfect.
They're for me, I really like the leaders who always have a nice, patient answer, because it's really easy to sound busy. It's really easy to sound upset or make someone feel unimportant. So when something happens that people don't like, I like the leaders that respond with okay, great, let's get neutral and curious and talk about this a little bit more, instead of just being well, I don't like what you had to say, or you're fired, or it's easy to have knee-jerk reactions. So the leaders that have that patience and boundaries, for me, I really enjoy.
Good.
So
cool. Any people come to mind?
One of my friends, I call her her Lady Grace. You know Danielle Albrecht.
Yes.
Yeah, that woman just kills me, man. Or people who I like. Big fan of Ashley Huseman. She's really funny. I mean, Ashley.
Yes.
We're in the group together. She does and says things that I would never say. I think what she says, but she does it so nicely. I'm wow, good for you.
Right.
Yeah, I'm
cool.
a fan.
All right. Tell us about some of your favorite podcasts that you like to listen to when you're kind of out and about or in the car.
I spend so much time on my own business, and I don't actually spend a lot of time in the world. I'll put it that way. So I'm really into Pod Save America, which is Obama's past speechwriters, and they go through the different politics going on in the Hill and kind of keep us involved in up to date events. Obviously, it's politically slanted a little bit, so they have a whole family of podcasts I love. So we have Pod Save America, Pod Save the World, which is an awesome take on global politics, which was not of interest to me of any kind. So I love hearing about what's going on in other countries and how business is done over there. And also Love It or Leave It, which is part of their group there. But another new favorite of mine is WTF with Mark Maron. That's kind of come up for me. I got really into Glow on Netflix, so I saw him. I didn't know him before then, so I love listening to that and hearing about creatives and how their process unravels and hearing his questions. So it's pretty
Great.
Cool.
Thanks for sharing.
Yeah.
So we're almost done with the interview.
Sure.
First, though, tell the people how they can find you online and where you like to stay online.
Okay. I like going on Instagram. I think food is a visual business. If you can't eat the food, you at least want to see it.
True.
So visit me on Instagram at Made by Meg. We also have our website, www.mbmcatering.com. You can also find us on Facebook, Made by Meg Catering. I think that's about it.
Yeah, that's good. And you love being on Instagram stories. Speaking of Instagram stories, we have to shoot one really quickly here.
All right.
Yeah, so you're there. Anywhere else online?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay, good. So before we get out of here, any last minute advice or wisdom you want to share with the people out there that are listening?
For all you creatives out there, believe in what you do, because you're offering something special that someone else isn't doing, and creating that space for your skill and your leadership will create a business for you. It's out there.
Great. Well, thank you very much for taking time. I know you're really busy, so I appreciate you taking the time to talk to us.
I'm honored that you would ask.
Of course. Sure.
You're awesome.
Yes. So we'll have you on again sometime soon.
Yes.
Keep up the great work, and we'll see everyone later.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Amani Experience podcast. You can check out the show notes on amaniexperience.com/podcast. Please remember to leave us a review on the platform you are listening on, and share this podcast with anyone who you feel would benefit from listening. See you soon on our next episode.